This video was honestly a lot harder to write than I thought it was going to be, considering all the factors there are when it comes to media and how we consume it and the format wars and all of that. And this isn't just me talking about physical media either. This also includes digital media, format types, streaming services, physical games, digital games, etc. So it should be important that I say this video is not trying to persuade anybody with how they consume media. This video is more or less an experiment that I was doing on myself and how I was consuming my entertainment. I'm only bringing this up now as to not be a statement taking over the conversation. Alright, are we good? We good? Good. So, physical media, or more or less just media as a whole. The media that we get out of physical media, or just media as a whole, is necessary for many. It's thanks to TV shows, movies, music, games, even YouTube videos and TikToks that help us get through our daily business. If I ever get in a bad mood, I could just pull up a pyrocynical video. If I need something to express my emotions, I pull up a Billie Eilish song. If I want a special night with my friends, we'll pull up the Lego movie or something. The corner. Entertaining media is something very important to me that I do not want to take for granted. However, this video is not going to be about the types of media that we consume, as I consider YouTube and TikTok just community-based rather than industry media-based like movies or TV shows. No, today's video is about how we consume our media. More specifically, you know, the physical media that I have right here. Yes, by the way, I pulled out specifically Cat in the Hat just for this part. This was not just a random thing I pulled out of my shelf. No, I intentionally picked it just for this sketch. Now, before I get called a zoomer, boomer, loser on Twitter or something along those lines, I'm suffice it to say that I actually also grew up with streaming as well. My parents had my Nintendo Wii in the living room and we installed Netflix onto it. I remember sitting with my parents watching nothing but iCarly and SpongeBob as they were on there at the time. So, yeah, I am nostalgic for streaming too, but my feelings on streaming I'm going to touch on later on in this video. For now, I want to talk about this as my brain has literally been making me hyperfixate on this stuff for a while now. And as some of you already know, if I hyperfixate and read a lot into a subject, I'm going to make a video about it. Before the advent of the internet and digital streaming and piracy, we had physical media to get our daily, well, media. And for the past few months, I've been experimenting on this and with how I consumed the media that was on it and how the world consumed it as well. And for this experiment, I've been slowly gathering all the materials needed to try out all of the mainstream formats that are, for the most part, usable. And then I grabbed more of it. And then I grabbed more of it. And then I grabbed more. For audio, we have the vinyl record, the compact cassette, and of course, the CD. And for video, there's the VHS, the DVD, and of course, the Blu-ray. I would have also gotten the 4K as it allows for the best resolution possible for physical media, but we didn't have a 4K player for this experiment, and we only had 2 movies for it anyway. Plus, 4K is just Blu-rays anyway, so they still fit in this bill. And I also made sure to grab the blank equivalents of these formats as well to write my own stuff onto them. I'm going to go in order of when each of these formats were created, discussing their origin, how it works, why people love them, my personal experiences with them, and why they are still relevant for those in my generation online. So, let's start off with the mother of physical formats, Gen Z's favorite hipster format, the vinyl record. Now, the concept behind grooves that play back audio is something that's actually been around for a century and a half, with the earliest record being the Phonograph, released in 1857 by a man named Edward Leon Scott de Martinville. There was the phonograph invented by Thomas Edison later in 1877. There's also cylinders, which are very durable.
Oh, shit.
And then, by the 1900s, 3 major record labels were releasing music: Edison Records, RCA Victor, and Columbia Records, the last 2 of which are actually still around to this day. But where are my hippie groovy boys? The modern-day vinyl record that we know and love today was actually developed by Columbia in 1948, being made entirely with polyvinyl chloride, the material that records are still being pressed on to this day. Alright, I'm just gonna state the obvious. I love this format. I really, really love this format. I've been collecting vinyl before any of these formats since 2018. I bought one of those cheap Victrola briefcase record players and a picture disc copy of Michael Jackson's Thriller. My dad will later get us a proper record player with speakers, a preamp, and a bonus. Got me all of the Michael Jackson picture discs that were released that year. And this actually leads into why people are still interested in vinyl. They come in so many varieties and colors. There's the standard 12 inches, there's 10 inches, 7 inches, there's different colors, there's swirls, there's splatters, picture discs, ones with holograms on them, there's ones with liquid in them, sand in them, blood-filled records, there's glow-in-the-dark ones, and the endless array of ones that are unnaturally shaped. It's one of the most expressive formats to have ever been created. My personal favorite record in my collection would definitely be this glow-in-the-dark pressing of Billie Eilish's When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? And not only is the sound pretty good, not exactly better than the other pressings, but the glow-in-the-dark is actually really impressive. I like taking a flashlight and just swirling it above the record to make these unique patterns. It's very stimulating and I really like it. There's also the experience that I had with the Marvin's Marvelous Mechanical Museum vinyl by Tally Hall. The splatter on this vinyl uses 5 colors on it, matching each of the boys' ties. And what I find so fascinating about this release is how they handled the final track of the album. So, as a lot of you know, the final track of Marvin's Marvelous Mechanical Museum is Hidden in the Sand, which just so happens to be the band's most popular song. So, while the CD and cassette versions hit it by just not listing it on the track list, the vinyl version, on the other hand, oh boy. So the vinyl version tricks you into thinking that Ruler of Everything, the song that plays before Hidden in the Sand, was the last track of the album, as it locks the stylus into a running, looping groove, making you think the album is over. However, if you pick the stylus up, move it around somewhere around the area that Ruler of Everything is in, then place it, that's when you'll find Hidden in the Sand. You have to literally look for the song yourself instead of it being played immediately. That is hilarious. But yeah, I love vinyl. Just putting the record on the platter, the stylus on the record, and seeing those grooves run through the stylus and converting it into audio waves, it's just so satisfying. It feels very organic, and it's why people love it so much and why people want to spend the time and money growing their collection. It's such a unique experience that you just can't get anywhere else.
Which kind of music do you like? Classical? Pops? Jazz? Mood music? You name it, RCA Victor's got it. The music you want, when you want it, by the world's greatest artists. Exciting new releases include Serenade, selections from the original soundtrack of the motion picture featuring Mario Lanza. Caruso, the best of Enrico Caruso compiled in one magnificent RCA Victor album. Belafonte, songs by America's foremost folk singer. Elvis Presley, new RCA Victor star, belts out a bevy of rhythm hits, and Eddie Fisher sings 21 Academy Award-winning songs. Hear them at your RCA Victor dealers now.
So by the 1950s and 60s, on-demand music was done through vinyl, while listeners who wanted their music portably would have to do it through the radio. And while we wouldn't get on-demand portable music just yet, we were certainly making advances. The compact cassette, more well known as just the cassette. Invented in 1963 by Lou Audens and his team over at Philips, these tiny boys were developed as a more compact and viable option for consumers to use magnetic tape to be able to store their audio, much like the more expensive reel-to-reel tape machines that were a thing during vinyl's creation. By the 1970s, audio quality on cassettes got better and better, and soon it became a decent alternative over vinyl, with one advantage being that recording on cassette was miles easier than on vinyl, meaning if you had the tool to give you that option, you were able to record your own audio onto cassettes. And this is where the physical media stuff derails a bit, as it's not just preserving pre-recording audio, but also giving individuals the ability to write their own stuff onto them. I'll get there when I get there, but anyway, cassette tapes were also dealing with a lot of competition at the time, with the main competitor being the 8-track, created a year later as the car equivalent of the cassette. Nevertheless, Cassette won, but there are still some independent record labels that do release new albums on 8-tracks and other formats for the novelty of it. But I don't want to talk about tape, I want to talk about tape! While the cassette itself was small in nature, we wouldn't get a portable way of playing them until 1979, with the answer to everybody's problems, the Sony Walkman. And by the 1980s, they would become an essential media format for music geeks, collectors, and even musicians, as the technology of the cassette would help manufacture some of the oldest portable 4-track tape recorders for independent musicians before digital workstations took over in the late 90s. But by the late 90s and early 2000s, cassettes would start dying off. But interest in them wouldn't start to grow until around 2014, when Disney decided to just go, oh, sorry, let me rephrase that. Yes, so in 2014, as a tie-in to promote Guardians of the Galaxy, they decided to release the entire film soundtrack onto cassette, with the casing being reminiscent of the Awesome Mix Volume 1 tape that Star-Lord has throughout the film. It is such a cool collector's piece, and it brought many people's attention to the format once again. I actually remember my dad picking it up for me at a bargain hunt, and I was just in love with it. I remember just staring at the tape reel, knowing that that's what contained all of the music, and I just thought it was a really cool format. I loved it. And then fast forward recently to where one of my coworkers had a Walkman on them, and soon my hyperfixation on them flooded once again, now leaving me to have this big ass tumor on my shelf. But no, in all seriousness, I love these tapes. I think it's such a fascinating idea that an analog tape with audio data can be played portably for your own personal business and then load it into a box for everybody else to enjoy it, and also having a car that can play the damn things. It's just really cool. And on top of that, because of how old and accessible the format is, you can find plenty of listings of people online selling off their old packs of blank tapes only for them to have a lot of stuff on it, whether that was news articles, voice memos, legal documentations, etc. It's thanks to all of this that the format has been very prominent on TikTok recently. It's actually the most popular music format on there right now, with people just sharing their collections of tapes and tape players, as well as showing off insane finds and getting hundreds of thousands and even millions of likes. It feels like you're part of a community with many different people experimenting on the format. One of my favorite videos on TikTok is of this girl whose uncle had passed away, inheriting his cassette collection, and one of these tapes in question being a recording of the Queen Live Aid performance from 1985. And no, not just a recording that her uncle had recorded on television or something like that. No, it was a recording that he did when he was at the concert, just holding his portable cassette player in the air, recording the entire ordeal. It is such a wholesome video, and it's amazing. Her reactions are just priceless. As an example as to what I am talking about for all of this, I recently picked up a stack of vintage blank cassette tapes from around the late 1970s and early 80s, and one of those tapes had a recording of the BBC, and it was a news broadcast recorded sometime in August of 1981, 42 years ago. Let me play a sample for you here.
Aroused enormous interest and comment. Feminists are exultant, and most Democrats at least mildly enthusiastic. As one reporter put it on the nightly news the other day, it brings excitement to an otherwise dull ticket. Well, that is more a denigration of Mr. Mondale than an endorsement of Miss Ferraro. But it is curious, is it not, that in what is perceived to be the home of feminism, the land of the liberated lady, it has taken so long to make even this first cautious step toward joining India, Israel, and of course Britain in considering a woman for the highest offices in the nation.
Now, another thing that people like to do with cassettes is, of course, what everyone else did at the time, making their own mixtapes and recording their own albums onto cassettes. Usually nowadays, it'll be an album they really like that's not on the format, or it's songs that have a certain vibe to them, but nevertheless, it's the same ordeal. I did this myself. I actually have a mixtape filled with songs that I really liked, and when it comes to albums that I really liked, I decided to go for one that I had been thinking about for a while that would work really well on cassette. The Portal 2 soundtrack. I might show it off in a later date, but to sum it up, I decided to put the entire 60+ track Portal 2 soundtrack onto two 90-minute cassette tapes. It took a lot of chopping and shortening some of the songs, but in the end, I got them to fit onto both sides of both tapes, and they actually sound really decent. Now, am I going to be switching from my Apple Music subscription to this? No. I'm just gonna say that no. My love for it comes from the idea of it being an analog audio format on the go. And while I do enjoy the audio coming from these tapes, and I grin like hell while doing so, nothing will ever be Apple Music for me. And this also comes from the few instances I like streaming, because Apple Music has 99% of what I want, while say TV and film streaming services only have around 5 to 10%. Speaking of video, so as audible entertainment was finally making its demandable way into people's homes, what about visible entertainment? Holy shit, is this a rectangle? No, you are not looking at some sort of weird Men in Black interrogation device. It's the Video Home System, or VHS for short. Before its release, people got their video media consumed through live analog television or watching films in theaters. But much like the radio, both of them make it very difficult for people to hand select what they want to watch on their own spare time. And when they do get what they want to watch, they won't be able to record it again for later watches. But as magnetic tape was being developed to store audio as well as store data, people were discovering ways to store video onto it too. By the way, there is a difference between film and tape, as film had been around for way longer than tape, and one is done chemically through frames and the other is done through magnetic strips. So sometime in 1976, the Japan Victor Company, or JVC, developed a consumer-friendly magnetic tape that, much like cassettes, would allow companies to pre-record tapes to sell to consumers, and consumers themselves can record material onto it. And thus, the VHS was born. What I find fascinating about VHS is actually very similar to cassettes. The technology behind the VHS especially is something that I can't even fathom upon. Technology Connections did a really good video about it and goes into way more detail than what I can ever do, but in a nutshell, the magnetic tape does a lot of with the head in order to be converted to video. The tape head itself is actually really fast in order to play even a single frame. Then there's VHS Hi-Fi, which uses a separate signal to deliver audio to the player. And since the signal is not connected to the video, that means that even the worst recording setting for VHS can still use Hi-Fi, meaning you can get up to 6 hours of audio recording from it. Also, the way that VHS does closed captioning honestly blows my mind. I don't want to get too much into it here because Technology Connections did a pretty good video about it, but to make a long story short, with the 500 to 600 lines of horizontal resolution that analog TV gives you, there is one specific line on the top that is transferring data. That would be the 21st line, and that line is doing some tomfoolery with the signal, allowing your television to submit data for what we could call closed captioning. It's absolutely amazing how the hell this even works, and it's thanks to this technology that led to the creation of the TV Guardian, a funny little tool designed to block out any profanity from getting to the captions or the audio. It's a pretty wound up device that I'll never freaking use, but gosh darn it is pretty amusing. Another thing that I am fascinated about with VHS that's similar to cassettes is that both are also consumer-friendly analog formats that anybody can record on. Now for VHS, not all players have the capability of it at the time, but it was not that far off. And once again, this leads to a lot of insane finds and even lost media to be discovered. Things like, well, like I said, less media, there's less commercials, and even classic internet memes and videos like You on Kazoo, and even TV airings of explicit movies.
See what happens when you find a stranger in the Alps?
Have been preserved thanks to VHS. You can even go online and find people selling blank tapes used to record the news or TV shows or films they liked, and even some custom stuff they done. But now for my example, my parents recorded this airing of a Blue's Clues special that aired in 2006, titled Meet Blue's Baby Brother. And this wasn't just any airing of it. No. What this is the debut airing of the episode. According to wikis and other forums, the episode aired on August 6th, 2006, and on the tape here, my parents wrote August 6th, 2006. The tape also contains special announcements for the episode that I think have never surfaced online before. There's also a screen bug on the corner that says new on it. So yeah, it's pretty obvious this is the first airing of the episode. I'm hoping to get it digitally preserved one day because of how sought after it is, but unfortunately, a segment was cut because of my baby self pressing the button to switch it to a Full House episode, and then they changed it back to the Blue's Clues episode. But besides that, 99% of the episode is there. A major benefit of VHS is that since most people switch to a format that I'll be talking about later on in this video, you can actually find VHS tapes, mostly, for cheap. I found this VHS copy of Shrek for only like a few bucks, and while it is in a pretty old condition, it still plays pretty well. And in the local thrift stores that are near me, there's actually a ton of VHS tapes of Disney movies and TV shows of that era. And since I have it connected to my Elgato capture card, that means I am able to watch these movies with my friends on Discord. Not to mention, a lot of people really like the analog look VHS gives off, with the little staticky things going across the screen, the slight color distortion, but unfortunately, if you look up VHS now on TikTok right now, most of the time it's going to be about analog horror or Five Nights at Freddy's lost tape training video stuff, whatever. If you've been on that side of the internet, you would know, but besides that, there are communities dedicated to this stuff, and it's honestly something worth checking out. Now, is VHS as a whole something worth coming back to? I mean, maybe. I mean, the audio's pretty good, especially VHS hi-fi being a thing, and the overall experience is neat. But since VCRs only use RCA, converting it to HDMI can be a bit of a hassle. And on top of that, VHS players that are in good condition can be really difficult and really pricey to find these days, since some of the last manufactured VCRs came out in 2006. However, a decade later, a Japanese company named Funai, yes, Japan once again, released their last VHS player in 2016 before ceasing production. And VHS collecting, like everything else here, has skyrocketed in recent memory, so maybe something will happen in the future, who knows? Especially since DVHS was a thing, in which its quality was very on par with early Blu-ray players at the time, and people are still putting modern day TV shows and movies onto these things, so who knows? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. The 1980s are here. Everybody was using analog for their videos, everybody was using analog for their audio, but what if everybody wanted to get jiggy with some ones and zeros? Holy shit, is that a circle? Finally, our first bit of physical media that has seen a steady bit of support ever since its creation. The compact disc. The CD. The Captain Disillusion. Developed in 1982 by, once again, Philips, this time with a little help from Sony, these shiny circular boys were designed to be the ultimate way for audible data to be stored, played, and preserved. Once again, they were being developed in Japan, and this is actually where one of my favorite facts does come into play. So when it comes to the first pieces of music being released on CD, there are actually two answers to this question. The first one is Billy Joel's 52nd Street, as it was the first to reach the format in Japan where it was being developed. And then for the second answer, that would go to Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA, as it was the first to be released commercially in the United States. So yeah, there's actually two answers to this question. impression. Funny little anecdote for you guys. When it comes to reading the files, CDs are actually read similarly to both vinyl and cassette. It's being read across a circular motion like the vinyl, but also being read in a patternized form like the cassette. But vinyl uses grooves and styluses, cassettes use magnetic strips, and CDs are done with
I'm a fire in my laser!
There's also this amusing urban legend going around regarding the CD's 74-minute runtime, that when Herbert von Karajan was endorsing the CD, he would only endorse it if Beethoven's Ninth Symphony could be played from it with no interruption, and that the longest recording that Sony reps had at the time just so happened to be 74 minutes. However, that's not really true, and instead it was just a balancing act between what Philips and Sony wanted regarding the size of the disc. And that 74-minute recording of the 970 would actually have to wait until 1997, about 15 years after the CD was first developed, in order to get a release on CD. Another one of my favorite little bits regarding the CD are these 1980s reports of the CD that were being made, one from ABC Science's Beyond Tomorrow and one from the BBC. Just seeing them talk about the CD as it was becoming the next major thing for music, it's just absolutely fascinating.
The biggest revolution in the recording industry since the invention of the long-playing gramophone record, but this is no ordinary disc.
Now the world is on the verge of the next great audio revolution, the compact disc, which its manufacturers say offers pure, perfect sound forever.
In a few years, your turntable may be gathering dust in the corner next to that old stack of albums.
The music
Instead,
is
you'll
recorded
listen to the
onto it
latest hits on a
digitally,
compact
and
disc
there's
player.
no needle being dragged through a groove. That information is being read by a laser light.
Pick up the information stored on the disc. The laser is beamed from a small circle like the one seen in the dark area here.
It's also slightly ironic since they're talking about how the audio quality is just so much better and so much clearer than the vinyl or cassette, but most people nowadays are gravitating towards vinyl for its imperfectness and more organic sound, so I thought that was kind of funny. But nevertheless, CD was starting to take over, even with the prices of CD players at the time.
They'll cost between $600 and $800.
And by 1987, CD was outselling both the vinyl and cassette for its form factor and being able to store more audio with less fidelity loss or dealing with tape waste. Some artists were also putting in extra songs onto CD that wouldn't ever appear on vinyl or cassette. One example I know of being Michael Jackson's Bad, where the song Leave Me Alone was the final song on the CD, but for cassette and vinyl, it's Smooth Criminal. Unfortunately, this one ended up being the last well-known and still supported music format on shelves. Sure, there was the Blu-ray audio, but those were only for collector's releases. And there was the MQS SD, but again, only for special releases, but those were all specialties. CD was the last format. And then something very tragic and very unfortunate happened. In 1997, a digital audio format known as the MP3 would be in development, and the coding tools for it would eventually be leaked by a random Australian college student later that same year. Nevertheless, it created a snowball effect, absolutely destroying the music industry that we know today, and leading it to the streaming service flooded, shitty payment obsessed, Ticketmaster atrocity corporate mess that it is today. And unfortunately, I don't think it's ever going to be the same again. It's honestly kind of a tragedy what happened to the music industry, and it's slowly going to get even worse right now as we speak, thanks to AI music. So to literally every living and working musician right now, that includes singers, that includes producers, instrument players, engineers, etc., I hope you're doing okay. We're all going to be here for you, and we hope that you all will still be producing wonderful, organic, human-made music that we will listen to this day and for future generations to come. We love you. I know that's a bit facetious, but seriously though, we love you, and we hope you guys are doing great. So, back to the CD, I guess. The CD is actually a pretty unique specimen to me. Since they were still big in the 90s and 2000s, they hit that Y2K quirk for me. And as a lot of you know, 80s and Y2K aesthetics are the for me. I am very much interested in them. Just watching the CD spin through the window, or if it doesn't have a window, just hearing it spin alone makes me giddy. It's like hearing the buzz of the cassette player, or just hearing your favorite VHS tape war up. Some people even put their favorite CDs on the wall, like what they do with vinyl and cassette. You might even remember Smosh having one of those CD walls as well. If you want to put your own stuff on CD, the CDRs had you covered, as it was what most CD players portably or in the car were able to use. In recent memory, CDRs are becoming a more fonded thing for a lot of people, and some people like to have decor and other things that remind them of the CDRs, or just start using them again in general. One of my favorite things that I found online that I thought about getting for my room was this really cool circular mirror that was designed to look like a blank CDR. It's really cool looking and I really want to get it, but it costs like $100, so I sadly had to skip on it, but I might be able to get it sometime in the future. Also, an example of me putting my stuff onto a CD is something that I actually did a few years back for an EP that I did. I called it Left Out, and it's actually a part of a trilogy I did that's available on streaming right now. And when I first made the EP back in like 2017, I actually had it burned onto a CDR, and I actually remember listening to it on a personal setup I had at the time. You can actually see that setup in the Controversial Moments in Michael Jackson's Music video that I did like a year later. Now, as for CD players, oh god, there are a ton of them. Since CD players rarely stop working, unlike cassettes and record players, you can actually find plenty of portable CD players online for pretty cheap. Of course, you might want to do your research on them first, as some players will have some background noise depending on the manufacturer. My portable CD player from 2003, for example, has this weird little buzz in the background and beeps that play in the background. I don't know why it's there. The audio is also very crispy, so I do not recommend it. One of my earliest memories of CDs would actually go to this copy of Thriller that my parents got for me. I remember we would play it in the car relentlessly, and it was where some of my fondest memories growing up was soundtracked. Around the time I got the MJ vinyls, I also got the CDs too, and they too soundtracked a good chunk of my life. Mainly the Invincible CD, and that soundtracked my summer of 2018. Fucking loved that album. It's still one of my personal favorites. Also, much like cassettes, CDs also have their fair share of independent artists pressing their music onto these formats. But unfortunately, it's now been bubbled to those scummy scam artists that go around high traffic cities handing out the discs, making you think it's free, but then making you pay the same price of those premium commercial made CDs you'd find in stores. It's also filled with a lot of schlop. Lots and lots and lots of schlop. There are a lot of bad and sometimes mediocre albums that are put onto CD, and they also fill up a ton of sections in thrift stores or aftermarket places. To be fair, so does vinyl, but most of those are either country, Christmas, novelty, or religious records, so it's kind of understandable. But with CDs, one of the main reasons for that schlop is because of the new 77-minute runtime. A lot of artists try to put as much music onto them, leading to their songs to be way too long and way too boring, with some good examples being Van Halen 3 by Van Halen or Be Here Now by Oasis. But one of the more unique things about CD, much like vinyl, is the weirdly shaped ones, like these Yoshi's Story and Diddy Kong Racing soundtrack CDs Nintendo released at the time, shaped like Yoshi and Diddy Kong respectively. There's also this Paul McCartney shaped CD I have as well, and with all of these, because of how oddly shaped they are, they cannot be played on a normal CD player where it sucks the CD in, kind of like the Nintendo Wii console. So instead, maybe go for one of those tray loading CD players like this one here. Those ones will do a lot better playing the discs. Another favorite CD of mine is this one of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. It's basically like a miniature version of the vinyl record, where the CD's label is actually that of the vinyl label, just put onto the CD, even having the 33 1/3 RPM label. And as you know, CDs do not spin that slow. They spin really fast. It even has this little cardboard cutout, just like the vinyl version. Apparently, they did the exact same thing for the White Album too, with the poster and photos, which is adorable, but I digress. I also have this limited edition Billie Eilish splatter artwork and this signed artwork slip from The Weeknd, both of which I got from special edition CD versions of those albums respectively. But my most incredible find out of all these CDs will forever go to this original 1995 pressing of Michael Jackson's History, Past, Present, and Future, Book 1. I found this at half-price books for about $5, and I was shocked to find out that it was an original pressing that contained the uncensored version of They Don't Care About Us. And that is something I am forever going to cherish for as long as I live. As for CD players, I just so happen to have this Sony CFD S70 that was manufactured sometime in 2016. It actually has slots for both CD and cassette, and you can even record stuff from the CD or radio onto cassette as well. And while the quality of the recordings aren't really that great, in fact they actually play a lot faster than what they should be, they do indeed record in stereo, which is pretty cool. I thought about maybe taking it in the car with me and recording the weird frequencies that it'll pick up from the radio and then use it in an effect somehow, but I digress. Much like VHS tapes, you'll also find CDs practically everywhere as people are trying to sell them off. They're much more cheaper than the vinyls or cassettes from what I've seen. And if you want to make your own, you'll also find CDRs online for pretty cheap, much cheaper than the blank cassette tapes. Although it looks like some people still want to use vinyl in the end, as in 2020, for the first time ever since 1986, vinyl managed to outsell the CD. So who knows? Hopefully it won't mean the end of it. I hope. I mean, it's still getting popular on TikTok, and there's a lot of videos on TikTok that are getting as viral as cassettes, so who knows? Holy shit, is that another circle? As the years went on for CD, there have been plenty of attempts to try to put video onto the things. The first examples were CD Video and the Video CD, released in 1987 and 1993 respectively. Then, in 1995, many different disc formats from Panasonic, Toshiba, Philips, and Sony were announced, including one where you had to flip the disc like a vinyl record. The one labeled SD9 became the winner for what we would know now as the Digital Video/Versatile Disc, or DVD for short. Ah, great, so we just got done replacing rectangles with circles, but it doesn't matter anyway because they come in rectangle boxes. What is going on in this world? I really don't want to touch on DVDs too much because Gabby Bell did a really good video on the subject, but I do want to touch on the basis that I want to touch in here. While DVDs did start out in a 4:3 resolution, much like VHS, as widescreen TVs started hitting the market, they managed to develop this neat encoding feature for both DVDs and DVD players that would stretch the video to fit in a 16:9 environment. They would still only fit in a 720x480 resolution though, and I'll touch on that later. And much like cassettes, VHSs, and CDs, they too have a blank equivalent for people to write stuff on. My example for this is with a project I did recently trying to make my own branded DVD with menus and everything. As to what I wanted to put on that DVD, I decided to make it all of the main movie reaction Christmas specials that I did between 2019 and 2022, and I called it 𝘵𝘺𝘰 Gaming's Christmas Cringe-tacular. I'll be releasing the .isl file for it sometime on Christmas, but long story short, it's a fully working DVD containing the specials, as well as the commentary I did for them, and other bonus additions. You'll have to look for them yourself whenever you get the ISO file. I actually made this file with a friend of mine named Pootis the Man, who actually did this DVD ISO for the Blue Shell Incident. Yes, the 30-minute film that Vinesauce Joel did with 3D Movie Maker is now readily available on DVD, including all of the redubs, the reloaded version, and subtitles and everything.
Well, all I gotta say, Luigi, you go to hell before you die! Die?
It's really cool and I like it. I'll put the ISO for it that's been made to the public in the description. But back to commercially made DVDs. They were actually a pretty costly purchase at the time, costing about the modern day inflated price of around $30, but they were a go-to option for people at the time as they offered so much more content than what VHS could offer. You can go on early forums at the time and you'll see people posting photos of their walls worth of DVDs because of how valuable they were at the time. Much like CDs, DVDs just hit that weird Y2K and early 2000s niche for me, with no not only its resolution, but also the things that are bundled in them. The main thing of which, of course, being the humble DVD menu. Look anywhere on the internet now and you'll see a bunch of people writing online about DVD menus and how they missed seeing them as they started a movie or a show, and waking up in the morning to them playing on loop and having as much joy out of the menu as they did watching the thing itself. I remember having the waking up moment happen to me with the SpongeBob SquarePants movie DVD. I remember playing this movie on my Xbox 360 a few nights as I was going to bed, and the next thing I knew, it was like 4 or 5 a.m. and I would be slightly dozed off and I'd hear the sounds of the menu looping over and over, but I was too tired to turn it off, but I loved the music. I loved it. Those are good times. But yeah, so the two main ones that you'll notice when it comes to DVD menus, being of course we'll go to Shrek 2 and Scooby-Doo. The former of which for how charming it is and how much care was put into it, and the latter for the film's incredible soundtrack and the highlighted song in question, Land of a Million Drums by Outkast, being a favorite for many. I hope one day that the song sees an official release on streaming, because unfortunately it has been delisted, only remakes are available. I did discover recently that the song did get an official release on vinyl as a single, and funnily enough, has the parental advisory sticker on it despite the song being completely censored, which ties into the fact that this version of the film was originally going to have an R-rated cut, so that makes this even more funny. So hopefully I'll get my hands on that one day, who knows. Another benefit that DVD has over VHS was that with them being more compact and easier to read, portable players would finally hit the market the next decade. I remember taking one of these a lot on road trips, eating food in the car with my parents, watching SpongeBob or Tom and Jerry or whatever was in the DVD case we took. It was incredible. Also, with people switching over from VHS to DVD, some people will also take their VHS recorded home videos and put them on there as well. And since the format is still pretty old, you can actually find people putting their old VHS recordings from back in the day onto DVD. This format is also a really nice way for me to be able to stream TV shows and movies with my friends on Discord. My parents had this DVD and Blu-ray player for a while now, and since they weren't really using it anymore, I decided to hook it up as well as connecting it to my capture card. However, because of the HDCP protection that is on it, leading it to black out whenever it detects it being captured or something like that, I had to connect it to this HDMI splitter that I had for a while, and also giving me the added bonus of me not having to disable HDCP copyright protection on my Nintendo Switch, allowing me to stream YouTube on it with no problems whatsoever. But yeah, while DVDs did decline in sales in the event of streaming services like Netflix and Hulu, with the rise of even more streaming services has led to people coming back to DVDs for their simplicity. I'll get back to that later, but for now, I kind of want to talk about some of my favorite DVDs in my collection. My biggest set so far will go to the first and next 100 episodes of SpongeBob SquarePants set. These two sets alone make up the entirety of seasons 1 to 9 of the show, and since we're currently on season 13 right now as of me making this video, hopefully going into a 14th season if that ever happens, that's actually a really good deal. I also have this DVD copy of the Smosh movie. Yeah, I remember getting this DVD a while back from Walmart using my own money. I don't think the movie was that bad back in the day, but man, it's really corny now. Not exactly bad per se, just really corny. I also have this Video Brinquedo DVD that includes Chopkick Panda and Ratatouille, and also this Food Fight DVD, so you're welcome. As for ones I actually did have growing up, that will go to SpongeBob Goes Prehistoric and the first SpongeBob SquarePants movie on DVD I mentioned earlier. I remember growing up playing the Prehistoric DVD so many times that I ended up breaking the damn disc from it being overplayed, but man, it was really fun. I think out of all the formats I discussed for today, DVD is still one many people go for, and new movies are being put on it right now, including the Super Mario Bros. Movie. So if you could find an old DVD player somewhere, or you just have a disc reader or writer on your PC, give them a shot again. Maybe even go see if some of your family members has them or something, so you don't have to spend any money on it. Just give it a shot someday. I think you'll like it. Hey, you want to know what else I also like? Circle. Blu-rays are the newest, most accessible physical media format developed in 2005 and 2006 by Sony. They are discs with the viddy thingies on them, but now the ends are softer for some reason. They do the thing, but with more resolution. So fun. Okay, in all seriousness, Blu-rays are actually really damn great. Just take everything that I loved about DVDs, for the most part, and put them here, but with even better resolution that could go from 720p to up to 4K 60 FPS resolution, which is sick for preservation and archiving. Because of them adding more storage via layering instead of side flipping like on DVDs, these things can go up to, at max, 128 gigabytes per disc, compared to the 4.7 gigabytes of a one-sided DVD or the 700 megabytes of a CD. And speaking of DVDs, HD DVD was developed at the time to allow 1080p to compete with the Blu-ray, but because Blu-rays had more studios backing it up, the HD DVD failed, giving the world at least one more format war for the final time. Okay, so remember that Blu-ray player that I just mentioned earlier? This is actually our first Blu-ray player. We did have another one that was actually made by Sony, but ironically enough, despite them owning the damn format, it completely stopped reading Blu-rays and only read DVDs. Ironic, isn't it? But we had gotten this player alongside a copy of the SpongeBob movie Sponge Out of Water on 3D, which came with a standard Blu-ray, and oh man, my eyes were in shock by the resolution. A lot of people seem to forget, thanks to them being exposed to YouTube's mediocre compression, that 1080p can actually look pretty sharp. And I am still blown away by 1080p Blu-rays today, like this one I got of the Mario movie. I also picked up Michael Jackson's This Is It on Blu-ray, which makes it sadly one of the few ways to officially watch Michael do his magic and all in HD, which is really sad to be honest with you, and also kind of ironic because the film has some shots where it's all zoomed out, so I don't know. Blu-ray discs also have writable versions too, and while I don't have any BDRs or have a writer to write them on, I really want to one day. I don't know if I'll release anything on Blu-ray considering that Sony owns the format, but still, I think it'll be fun to try it out, mainly for storing stuff on it. So one of the main purposes people do with these optical discs, mainly the DVD and Blu-ray, is to preserve the contents onto the disc like a storage drive, and having that as an archive to last beyond our lifetime. People have speculated that a written DVD with its data laser cutted out and everything can last about 100 years, while the M-Disc, specifically designed for this purpose in 9, cuts them even deeper and has been speculated to last upwards of 1,000 years, which is insane to me. And now here we are with Microsoft's Project Silica, which could last even longer at an estimated 10,000 years. Crazy shit, honestly. But yeah, back to the film side of things. So if there is one movie I would absolutely love to get on Blu-ray, and this feels like the only time I can finally talk about this movie here on this channel, it's this silent film I remember watching on Netflix in like 2012 because they had a special edition release of it at the time. Georges Méliès's A Trip to the Moon from 1902. I love this movie a lot, even referencing in a game that I had worked on some time back. I put like a sprite of it in the background, which I absolutely love. But yeah, that film got a preservation project 110 years after the film came out in 2012, and like it was like in color, and the soundtrack was done by an electronic French duo named Air. It was also given a Blu-ray release as well, and it has this really nice hard shell covering on it. I would love to get a copy of it, but unfortunately it is really rare nowadays, and copies that I found of it online can go upwards of $100, which is insane for, at the end of the day, a 15-minute film. My only gripe that I have with Blu-ray is that there aren't really a lot of shows on there, or at least ones that I'm into. I know that Pokemon Indigo League got a new Blu-ray release because of a remaster, and Rick and Morty also has been released on here, but SpongeBob SquarePants has sadly yet seen a Blu-ray release, despite the show getting some recent remasters in 1080p and the show itself airing in 1080p nowadays. So hopefully we'll see that fixed soon. But I'd say for now, I'll stick with my seasons 1 to 9 DVDs. And I feel like the lack of shows being on here boils down to the format being owned and thus have to be expensively licensed out by Sony. I hope one day they allow people from the public to release stuff on Blu-ray, much like, well, every format up to this point ever, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, at least Angry Video Game Nerd is on here, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, overall, I love the Blu-ray for its position in archiving media and it being the best quality option for those wanting to get into physical media. It is expensive, don't get me wrong, but if you want the best video quality possible, this is the best way to do it. And with that, those are all of the main formats that I have to discuss. By the time of Blu-ray's release, Netflix was testing out this new system for people to be able to pay a small monthly fee to be able to watch whatever content their hearts desired online instead of having to send out DVDs. And with the 2008 recession hitting people's homes, they naturally went for that $8 a month deal instead of the $20 DVDs they had to buy over and over again. And naturally, they would do the same for music when Spotify hit the scene. So why are people coming back to these? Well, for one thing, they allow so much more expression for people. They can add little extras and pack in things with their releases, like the poster I mentioned for the White Album earlier. And with vinyl and cassettes, they can even be in multiple colors too. And with cassettes, not only can they be used as a release for music or artists, but they can also be an art form for artists too, as the sound of tape and how it sounds very saturated can be something that artists can try to go for. You can also find plenty of websites dedicated to independent artists who release their stuff only on cassette, which is really cool, honestly. And as I've said before, you can go on TikTok and see people show off their cassette setups and what players and headphones they use. It feels like a community, and it's really cool seeing what they can cook up. Same thing goes for VHS and its analog look. Many people have actually recorded stuff on VHS or the VHS-C for camcorders and use it as an aesthetic for their videos. And if they don't have access to it, there's even applications and video editing plugins specifically designed for you to get that VHS look with custom text and everything. One of my personal favorites is Red Giant Universe's VHS effect. I've used it a lot before. I love this effect. It really does get the job done. But if you want a more realistic look and also one that's a lot cheaper, there is an application that you could get on the App Store and the Google Play Store, and that one does the trick too. Some people also like to flirt with it for artistic reasons. Like if an artist releases an album whose sound is in a specific time period, releasing it on a format of that time period makes perfect sense. My vinyl copies of The Weeknd's Dawn FM and Silk Sonic are perfect examples of this. The 80s and 70s sounds respected of these two fit so well on vinyl, and I really hope to get the cassettes versions of it soon. Aside from the Silk Sonic one, I might have to wait for that at a later date because also, now that we have these artists filling in those two time periods, I don't know if this is a thing or not, but I hope to God that there's one for 90s and Y2K sounds. At the moment, Anamanaguchi and Magdalena Bay for some reason fit that for me, but I haven't really seen any artists actually trying to fill in that Y2K void. Oh, wait, there are artists that sound like that? Good. But yeah, during this project, I have attained a ton of blank CDs, DVDs, and cassettes. So hopefully I'll come up with something for all of them. Of course, I've done the Portal 2 cassettes, the Christmas DVD, the Left Out CDs, so hopefully I'll see what I can do with them. But yeah, creating things and preservation are some of the reasons that people have been moving to physical media. And then there's streaming. Streaming. I honestly did not really want to bring this up when I was making this video, but honestly, it's a subject that is way too important to ignore, and I feel like I do have to discuss it because streaming services nowadays have now become an overflooded corporate mess. What originally started out as like 1 or 2 streaming services has now become 200 or so. There's Paramount Plus, there's Amazon Prime Video, there's HBO Max, Max. There's Stars, there's Peacock, Vudu, Crackle, Crunchyroll, Discovery Plus, Apple TV Plus. What originally started out as a competitor to cable has now started to become just as bad, if not worse, than cable. Because I at least know what channel will play The Office and try to keep it that way. When The Office became popular again, thanks to it being on Netflix, NBC thought to themselves that they can make a quick buck for themselves. So they decided to take it away from Netflix and then put it onto their own platform that's called Peacock. And I sadly only know a handful of people that use Peacock. So yeah, no Office for you, Netflix, but hey, you could still always watch Cuties. No. Now, you could have also been able to watch Inside Job too, but that's been canceled now. Thank you, Netflix. But yeah, this is not to say that cable doesn't do that sort of ordeal as well, where they switch platforms. They also have to deal with that too, mainly for licensing things. For example, when Family Guy first got canceled, Fox decided to move it away, and Adult Swim picked it up and started re-airing the show, causing it to get a lot more popularity, and thus they were able to greenlit the show again. It did get canceled again, then come back. And now that Fox is owned by Disney, they had to take it away from Adult Swim and put it onto one of Disney's own channels on Fox. But why isn't this as bad as them doing it on streaming? Because cable already has the Fox network where it came from in the first place! But then there will be the instances of them removing episodes from the show for some ridiculous reason. Disney Plus removed Stark Raving Dad from The Simpsons because of the Leaving Neverland documentary, because we all know Michael Jackson was in that episode. And because of every accusation that Doc was making has now been proven false in the court of law, it makes that removal even more hilarious, especially since I could still listen to Do the Bartman on Apple Music, which is a song that Michael specifically wrote for The Simpsons. Paramount Plus once removed Midlife Crustacean from SpongeBob SquarePants because of its panty raid scene at the end, which is a hilarious sentence to say in and of itself, because that ending showed that you shouldn't be doing stuff like that because Mr. Krabs got caught doing it. But now that it's back up again, I highly doubt it'll stay that way. Also, it's kind of funny that both services have a plus in their name, and both of these episodes come from the 3rd season of a show involving a yellow-skinned character. And then there's music streaming like Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, YouTube Music, etc., with many of them varying between qualities, some offering podcasts, the others don't, or with the case of Apple, having them as a separate application, some services having their songs, others don't, and with all of them equally, their pay is dog shit. The main reason people will rather prefer vinyls, cassettes, and CDs over streaming is that the payouts for streaming are absolute dog shit. Like, how the f do you even manage to make a penny from a penny, you greedy c***? It was because of this exact reason that Kanye went the way he did with his Donda 2 release and randomly deciding to make it a STEM player exclusive. Dude, just put it on vinyl, man. Even Donda got an official vinyl release. Chick-fil-A! Another reason that a lot of people are preferring physical over digital nowadays is because of the extortionate prices that these services are asking for nowadays. Like, if you gave me $45 right now, I would rather go get a couple of movies in the $5 bin at Walmart and a few CDs of albums that I like, instead of 2 months of Netflix with only a handful of films to watch that aren't even guaranteed to stay on there forever. And at least I know most of the money will go to the people that made the film too. And some of this whole physical media thing isn't even about the films or the shows or the music. It can even be out of spite too, as many shows that are streaming exclusive have been getting canceled left, right, and center because for some reason, despite them being the best shows on the platform, they just can't for no reason whatsoever. Inside Job is the best example of this. I absolutely loved Inside Job when it first came came out. I felt super connected with the characters and the environment the show took place in. I really liked the references to conspiracy theories that I have read so much into, and the cute details in the backgrounds had, and also the humor. Oh my god, it was hilarious. I fell in love with this show. It was like Family Guy mixed with Gravity Falls, and it was so good. I actually really liked it, but unfortunately Netflix, despite greenlighting the show for season 2, decided to can the show immediately upon release. I was absolutely devastated when hearing this. I felt so in love with the show when it first came out because I felt like I was in a community when I watched it, but now it's gone forever, and I'm never gonna get another show like it ever again. So overall, the main hatred for streaming is that their corporate greed is finally getting to their heads, and many people are going back to physical in order to get their entertainment. And hopefully that will stay the same forever. So, I haven't really been so honest when it came to how I've been seeing things lately. Ever since the strike, I have been having a lot of anxiety over how I've been enjoying shows and movies. I feel like if I'm enjoying a new show or a new movie nowadays, I have all these thoughts about how well the writers and actors are being paid and treated, and I would feel guilty that I'm not doing enough. I hope soon they get paid more for what they do, but during the strike, it's actually led me to a lot of other fears I have of what could happen to these shows. Like when I eventually do get into a new show, I'm afraid about a main character dying and the fandom stirring up and the show ending abruptly. I mean, I know death is an important plot point and this whole thought is silly, but to me it comes off as very personal, as I see these films and shows being in a universe that continues much like ours, and them taking away a character that I like or can relate to would take me away from the whole experience altogether. I'm not going to get into it here because this video is already long enough and I don't want to give out any spoilers, but Under the Dome did that a lot and I absolutely hated it. I know it's ridiculous to think like that, but it's honestly how I've been handling things lately. Another thought I've been thinking about lately was shows that were ending very quickly, like Steven Universe and The Owl House. I first got into those shows literally a few months before they ended, and I was absolutely heartbroken because I first tried staying away from it because everybody was just doing all this back and forth stuff, and I hated hearing all the discourse around it. But then once I get into it, it's already gone. It's over. And now that the Owl House has finished up, I'm afraid that I've just lost the chance to get into a show like this during my youth. I know a lot of people do criticize Steven Universe for its plot points and its characters, but that doesn't really matter much to me. I love this show from the bottom of my heart, and I do not care what people say about it. And I feel like me doing this entire video with all these DVDs and VHS tapes, it feels more or less like a coping mechanism because of all the stuff I've been missing out on after all these years. And the same thing goes for Inside Job. When Netflix first canceled that show some time back, I was so heartbroken because I was very connected into the show, and now it's gone. And I feel like the same can also happen for music streaming too. I feel very devastated because of everything that happened after Napster. And now here we are with Ticketmaster and their fees and all of the stuff that's going on with Taylor Swift and so much drama and discourse. And it just sickens me that every industry that we know of is crumbling. And it's thanks to physical media that it kind of just makes me wish things were a lot more simplified. And I kind of wish that all of these genres could just go back to a better place. At the end of the day, physical media, as well as its many alternatives, is very important to literally everybody. It allows people to be very creative with themselves. It allows people to have many alternative ways to obtain their media, and they also allow for the preservation of history. No other way of obtaining media could ever do that again, even with the internet. I don't know what's going to happen to streaming or physical media within the next 5 years. I don't know if they're going to stay or they're going to go away. I'm actually kind of nervous about how things are going to go, especially with the very finite amount of record pressing plants that exist in the US. But whatever happens, at the end of the day, I hope that everyone who's in these communities, much like the gaming community and how they revived the Wii's internet with Reconnect 24, can give us the ability to make our own records and our own cassettes, our own CDs, our own DVDs, and everything. And we could still keep the idea of physical media going for as long as media is still a thing.
Forgetting something smart. No more songs of broken hearts. I just wanna forget and play my guitar. We've been sledding on the beach. Now our friends are out of reach. Trapped in corduroy jeans, we sail so slowly. When I go, send me quickly. Don't need no race. Tell me what you think of me. Words slip out so easily. Just remember the things that I've provided. Been distant way too long. Distance writes a pretty song, one that catches your ears and makes you feel wrong. When I go, send me quickly. We don't need no race. We forget so easily just what makes us human. I'm not asking for world domination.
Hello, everybody! Thank you all so much for watching this massively long essay, My Love for Physical Media. This project in video literally took months to work on, and I'm so happy that it's finally complete. If you guys are interested, I'll have links in the description for everything that I mentioned in this video, as well as the music that I used for this video. You might have also noticed that the tone of this video is slightly different, and that's because it's actually kind of a blend of YouTubers I've been watching a lot lately. Mainly 𝘵𝘵, Gabby Bell, Billiam, Polygon Donuts, Cat Icarus, etc. Mixed with the long essay videos that Pyrocynical has been doing. I've been getting into that side of YouTube lately, and I wanted to make this video as a thank you to them for everything they've done for me. But with all of that said, I want to hear what you think. What are your thoughts on physical media? And what are your thoughts on the things surrounding physical media? Do you like the fact that it preserves a lot of pre-recorded history? Do you like the fact that it preserves a lot of old history that was created by us individuals? Be sure to tell me all of that in the comments below. And if you have any other suggestions for what you want me to talk about next, then you can submit them via Twitter, Discord, and in the comment section below. Yes, I am still going to be calling it Twitter. I am not going to be calling it X. That is unless they change the URL, but whatever. And if you enjoyed this video, then be sure to hit the like button, and if you're new, the subscribe button and the notification bell to be notified whenever I upload a video. And if you want to support me even further, then there's also the merch store that I have over at danieltg.store. I've been working on this store a lot recently, and I've got a lot of cool designs up there, so if you like what I do and want something tangible out of it, then be sure to go check that store out. The link to that is at the end card and in the description below. Anyway, with all that said, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.